Thoughts on the Bible readings, 2 Samuel 1, Jeremiah 7 and Matthew 18, for July 17th. 2 Samuel begins with David hearing of the death of Saul and his sons on Mount Gilboa. The news was brought to David in Ziklag by a dirt-covered Amalekite. This man sought to ingratiate himself to David and was hoping to be generously rewarded for his news. Instead, the man is shocked and terrified by David's angry response. Before David responded, he asked the Amalekite to tell him the circumstances of the death of Saul and his sons. The account is given, and David is told by the Amalekite the information we heard in 1 Samuel 31. However, he provides extra information believing that David will reward him. The Amalekite says that he came upon Saul who was nearing death, and at the request of King Saul he slew Saul. As proof that he had done what he claimed, the man brought Saul's crown and armband. David mourned till the evening and then rose in rage and tells the Amalekite that his actions had sealed his own death, having slain Yahweh's anointed. That wicked man was instantly executed by one of David's young warriors. The second half of the chapter outlines David's ode of lament for Saul and Jonathan. The lament is called the Song of the Bow, since the bow was Jonathan's weapon of choice. Jonathan had given David his bow earlier when the two friends made a covenant between them. The words of the song are in verses 19 to 27. At David's command, they were recorded in the book of Jasher and were to be taught to Judah, David's own tribe. David speaks of Saul and Jonathan as the glory of Israel, and they were slain on the mount high places, defending the people of the Lord against their enemies. David is distressed that the Philistines will gloat over their victory. David says, "Tell it not in Gath." The Hebrew is a poem. Tell it not in Tel Town. David asks God to withhold moisture from falling on Mount Gilboa. Verses 22 to 23 describe the valiant and courageous and undivided warriors that Saul and Jonathan were. Verse 24 outlines Saul's generosity towards the Jewish maidens he favored. Saul showed generosity to many during his life. In the last 3 verses, David concludes his lament by saying that he is greatly distressed by Jonathan's untimely death. That demise was the end of an extraordinarily deep friendship. No doubt that this friendship will again flourish in Messiah's kingdom. David is exemplary in his speaking well of Saul, who constantly had sought to destroy him. Let us learn to speak always graciously with measured words. Ephesians 4 verses 29 to 32. Jeremiah 7 is about the evil that prevailed in the land of Judah. Jeremiah is told to stand at the gate of the temple and tell everyone who entered the building that they were hypocrites. The people of Jerusalem believed themselves to be holy and in accord with God's values. They were convinced that for this reason no calamity could come to them. Yahweh's message to them is for them to change their ways if they want to remain in the land. Otherwise, disaster would befall them. Read verses 5 to 7 carefully and consider the implications for the way we must show mercy and justice to all people. By contrast, verses 8 to 11 tell us the corrupt way that they were living. The prophet says that the Almighty detested and would punish them for their self-delusion. The nation declared their belief that their sovereign delighted in them. Verse 11 is quoted by our Lord Jesus Christ in Matthew 21 verses 13 as he cleansed the temple. This shows that the leaders' behavior was just as perverse 600 years after the prophet's time, despite the Lord having disciplined them by overthrowing them and sending Judah into exile. The Almighty tells the leaders to learn from history by allowing the tabernacle at Shiloh to be overthrown for a long period of time because of the nation's wickedness. In verses 16 to 17, Jeremiah is told not to pray, nor intercede, for the people, as God will not listen. The nation's offensive worshipping of idols is described in verses 18 to 19. Their principal goddess is described as the Queen of Heaven. Near to where I live is a massive Catholic church which is named Regina Caeli, which translates from Latin to the Queen of Heaven in English. Judah's sovereign expresses his jealousy and anger at their insult to him. In verses 20 to 26, Yahweh speaks of their continuing refusal to listen to him and amend their doings. Judgment could not be delayed. So in the last 3 verses, the prophet is told to tell the nation to commence their grieving now. Matthew's 18th chapter focuses on humility and forgiveness, both of which are crucial if a disciple is to enter the kingdom. Forgiveness must be given to those who request it. Never in the Bible is forgiveness unconditional. Whether it is the forgiveness God offers us, or the forgiveness others ask of us, it depends upon whether we contritely ask our Father's forgiveness, and as we forgive others. See the Lord's Prayer, Matthew 6 verses 12 to 14. Humility and absence of malice is the foundation for receiving an inheritance with our Father and His Son. The disciple must never become the cause of stumbling for another. Being conscious of the sources of sin in our lives will result in believers taking the extreme actions required to prevent us losing the kingdom. The parable of the lost sheep indicates the love of the shepherd for his straying sheep and the extreme effort expended in its recovery, as well as the accompanying joy when the lost sheep is recovered. The parable of the stumbling disciple is based upon the same principles. The maximum exertion is to be made in order to restore a beloved disciple. Our Lord's words to Peter are of ongoing and limitless forgiveness, as the number 490 represents. Our forgiveness is conditional on extending constant forgiveness to others, Matthew 6 verses 12 to 14. Jesus' instructions here stand in stark contrast to Lameck's vengeful attitude mentioned in Genesis 4 verses 23 to 24. Most pertinent to us is the parable of the unforgiving servant. Our God has forgiven us an immeasurable debt. Unless that moves us to see that, however great we might esteem any wrongs done to us, they need to be seen in perspective as inconsequential. We must be moved like our Lord Jesus Christ and His Father from within our heart to truly forgive others.